I'm Richard Osgood. I'm head of the Historic Environment team of Defence Estates. Salisbury Plain is possibly the best preserved archaeological landscape in Western Europe. As such, it's an essential part of what makes us British, our understanding of our culture, of our heritage. It survives like that because of the Army's presence since 1897 here on Salisbury Plain. That's prevented the ravages of industrial scale ploughing or of big development schemes that have taken place elsewhere in southern England. You look at southern England now, perhaps 200 years ago you'd have had Roman villages, you'd have had medieval settlements and field systems, you'd have had the burial mounds of the Bronze Age all across various chalkland areas. Now they tended to have disappeared because of those factors I've mentioned that the Army has precluded. As such, it's a phenomenally important landscape, 38,000 hectares of an archaeological tableau. It's wonderful.
This is a landscape that has been maintained by grazing over thousands of years. So it is basically trying to maintain it in that state by continuing the same sort of management. In the past we would have had sort of droves being, sheep roaming across the hillside and cattle. We can't do that so easily with the military. We have a bit more restriction on how we graze the site, but it is important to keep that going because most of the plant species you see here, they've evolved to the fact that we've got very thin soils here with no nutrients. They're very specialist, so we need to try and maintain that, and largely that's through grazing to keep the grass down, otherwise that would swamp everything else, and also obviously by an ongoing programme of removing scrub which quickly encroaches over the grass and shades it out, puts in more nutrients, and before you know it you've got a different community. I mean, most of the plant species that we're sort of looking at surrounding me now are specialised to cope with these unique situations.
I'm Stan Rawlins and I'm the third generation of our family to farm here. It's a mixed farm, dairy, beef and corn. We know we're tenants on the Army farms and we have to respect that. The landlords over the years have been very good. We certainly have to worry about the environment. There's a lot of archaeology, there's also lots of flowers and birds. We try as best as farmers can to, accommodate everybody.
It comes as a huge surprise that whenever I speak to people about the archaeology of Salisbury Plain, I can always quite honestly, hand on heart, say that the reason it's here is because the Army's here. And we can always mitigate, we can always make sure that there are ways that the military can train here, but at the same time don't damage the archaeology. For instance, you can see around here all sorts of different monuments, all sorts of different time periods. The word we use in archaeology is a palimpsest. It's layer upon layer of archaeology, but there are different ways we can preserve these monuments and stop military damaging them, but at the same time achieve the training that we require. Behind me at the moment, a series of Bronze Age burial mounds. These are places about 4,000 years ago that people buried their dead, often with grave goods. We found a very effective way of protecting them is to put palisades around them, white topped, so with any ambient lighting, any moonlight, you can see them even at night. And there are signs which say, don't dig here or don't drive your vehicles here. It's pretty obvious, but the signs make that much more certain for the user of the estate. And any soldier that comes out onto the estate will see these all across the area and hopefully will recognise that as a feature to keep away. We can incorporate that within a training regime, so some of the bigger landscape archaeological monuments, although palisaded off, there will be a causeway going across the monument above, built up so it doesn't damage the archaeology, but you can use it as say a minefield within a military exercise. Now it's also important to consider the archaeology as archaeology in its own right, because military who use the estate here for a training purpose will potentially go to theatre where the cultural heritage, the archaeology of that region is very important to those people who live there. So by taking care of looking after the archaeology here, and if that's ingrained within the soldiers' use of an estate, perhaps so they'll get that in theatre as well. And I think that's a very important thing for any Hearts and Minds campaign.
There seems to be a perception amongst the public that there's very little of the training area that is accessible, and actually that's not correct at all. There's very large parts of the east are crisscrossed with public rights of way, and some of the existing tracks that the military use are also accessible. On the centre even there are two public rights of way. One goes right through the middle of the live firing area and another one heads off from the south to the sort of northwest. And obviously you can only use those when the flag's down, but those are accessible. There's other public rights of way on the bottom of the central area. The west is more limited, really there's just the perimeter road, although the military do open roads to Inver Village and surrounding area at certain parts of the year. So I think actually access is I was surprised at how much there was when I started here. Yeah, the Bustards, although they're on the land that's owned by the MOD, so it's basically a tenant that got them on his land, and we are involved with that but it's more of a sort of supporting role and a liaison role, and obviously it's a sort of separate project in its own right, but yes, that seems to be progressing well at the moment as well, and obviously it's positioned here because of the presence of the training area.
It was very clear to me that when I joined the Ministry of Defence that my job was to make sure that training continues. I'm here to make sure that the chaps that are able to do the training that they require for going into the theatre. Now, by the same token, I have to protect the archaeology because it's been here in many cases for 5,000 years. It's survived largely because the Army's been here, but that's a situation that has to continue. We've got the estate on trust. My job is to make sure that we look after it properly for societies to enjoy.